December 1975. The North Sea was not just water. It had transformed into a raging mass of liquid lead, trying to swallow every living thing that dared to disturb its peace. The oil rig, Behemoth 9, shuddered like an old dog in a pre-death fever, gripped by the jaws of a 12-point storm 300 miles from the nearest shore. It was a rusty, four-legged spider frozen above an abyss where the depth under the supports was measured in kilometers of absolute darkness. Inside the steel box reigned a spirit of doom. The air was thick and sticky, a mix of stale tobacco smoke, fried food, diesel fuel, and the vibration of giant generators that seeped through the soles of work boots, right into the bones. Every sound here had a metallic echo. The creak of bulkheads, the roar of waves against steel, and the eternal whisper of the wind the sailors called Banshee. Kaz, the senior electrician with swollen eyelids, sat in the empty canteen under a flickering fluorescent lamp. Before him lay an unopened letter from his wife. The envelope, once white, was now saturated with the sweat of his palms and grease that didn't wash off even after an hour in the shower. Kaz knew what was in it: unpaid bills, debts growing faster than his child, and the same silent question: when would he finally stop running into the sea? He had no answers. He was here because the North Sea paid for his fear 3 times more than any factory in Glasgow, and because the rusty rig was the only place he could hide from his own life. Suddenly, the light under the ceiling flickered, turning a sickly, nauseating yellow hue. Old lamps hissed, and a general alarm signal sounded throughout the Behemoth, a sharp, analog screech of a klaxon. The voice of Brody, the drill master, came over the intercom speakers. He wasn't shouting, but there was something viscous in his words, as if he were speaking with a mouth full of hot oil. Attention, drilling deck. Emergency stop. We hit a membrane. All senior shifts. Immediately to the rotary table. Kaz rushed outside, where the wind instantly knocked the breath out of him, mixing icy spray with an oil film. On the drilling deck, the crew froze like statues. What they pulled from a depth of 5,000 meters was not a damaged drill bit. It was a twisted, impossible construction of steel and tungsten that now resembled a huge organic root or tentacle, frozen in agony. It pulsed with the colors of a gasoline film on water: poisonous purple, dead blue, and phosphoric green. A low, vibrating hum came from the object, making Kaz's teeth ache and his vision blur. Brody stood by the control console, his eyes glassy, empty. He whispered, addressing no one.
"We didn't puncture a reservoir, Kaz. We punctured skin. It was there before the oil, before the world. It was sleeping and we just knocked on the door."
Young Assistant Sims got too close. He reached out with a hand and a dirty glove to touch the shimmering surface of the root. In that second, the object opened like a fleshy flower. A cloud of sparkling dust covered the lad. Sims didn't scream. He began to glitch. His body jerked at unnatural, broken angles, repeating the same head movement. Snatches of phrases flew from his mouth about how warm he suddenly felt, how he saw his mom. Before the paralyzed horror of the crew, Sims began to melt. His overalls, skin and bones liquefied, merging with the metal grating of the deck. A minute later, only a shiny growth on the steel remained where the boy stood, pulsing rhythmically. Horror spread faster than the storm. The platform began to change before their eyes. It wasn't an instant transformation. It was a painful, visceral mutation of steel into flesh. Kaz ran through the corridors to the generator room, and the walls around him swam, becoming soft to the touch. The paint blistered, and beneath it appeared not rusty beams, but muscles and tendons made of wet, sparkling metal. Cables on the ceiling twisted into thick veins pulsing with black liquid. The most terrifying was the sound. The PA system intercom came alive on its own. No commands came from the speakers. A chorus of distorted voices poured out. These were the voices of the crew, those who had already integrated. They sounded stretched, as if recorded on an old, chewed magnetic tape.
Kaz, why didn't you open the letter? Mary is tired of waiting. She's already here, at sea. We're now all together. There are no debts here, only rhythm. Join us, Kaz.
It knew everything. It read their memories, their darkest fears, and broadcast them through the speakers, turning Behemoth 9 into a giant psychedelic instrument of torture. The geometry of space broke. Kaz opened the door to the canteen, but ended up in the engine room, which now resembled the innards of a whale. Stairs led nowhere, ending in dead, fleshy, breathing walls. In the very heart of the platform, Kaz found what used to be Brody. The master was completely encased in the main diesel engine. Huge steel pistons moved right through his cut-open chest, acting as a mechanical heart. His face was covered in oil, and that same shimmering ooze. And instead of eyes, 2 black vortices glowed with an internal fire. Brody's head turned with a mechanical grinding sound. His mouth opened, and the sound of a working mechanism came out.
Don't, Kaz. This is evolution. We were just meat serving rusty metal. Now we are metal that received a divine soul. Look at this. It is perfection. We no longer pump oil, Kaz. We pump ourselves into him.
Brody raised an arm that was no longer an arm, but a bundle of hydraulic hoses ending in sharp metal claws. He pointed to a pressure gauge, the needle of which was off the scale. Platform Behemoth 9 no longer stood on the bottom. It began to move its steel legs, preparing for the first step. Kaz realized the escape pods were a trap. He saw how one of the pods was sucked into the hull, where steel doors turned into jaws that slowly chewed the metal along with the people inside. He ran into the living block. What he saw in the canteen was worse than any hell. The rest of the crew, 40 men, had merged into one giant mass of flesh that filled the entire room. Their faces emerged in the surface of this mass, like blisters on the skin of a sick person. They didn't scream. It was a low, vibrating psalm that made the platform walls resonate in unison. Each of them was connected to a common network through thick black cords emerging from their spines and entering the floor. Kaz got to the flare tower, the highest point of the Behemoth. From here, he saw the true scale of the catastrophe. The platform had turned into the skeleton of a giant creature. The derrick twisted into a spiral, resembling the spine of a steel dragon. The living blocks pulsed like giant hearts. He looked down at the sea. There was no ocean. As far as the eye could see, the surface of the water was covered with a thick layer of shimmering black substance. It wasn't dead. It boiled, forming patterns like fractals or thousands of faces screaming silently. New structures made of shipwrecks and whale bones rose from this mass, stretching toward the platform like children to a mother. He took the same letter out of his pocket. His His hands were no longer human. A shimmering ooze leaked from under his fingernails, and the veins on his wrists became black embossed wires. Kaz finally ripped open the envelope. Inside was a photo of their little daughter taking her first step, and a short note from Mary.
We love you. Just come back alive. We need nothing but you.
Kaz cried. For the first time in 20 years, bitter tears rolled down his cheeks, mixing with the fuel oil and black blood of the Leviathan.
I can't.
He whispered.
I'm no longer the man who left you.
He felt the vibration of the tower change. The platform made a sound from which the sky itself seemed to crack. Steel supports tore away from the bottom. The giant biomechanical monstrosity took its first heavy step on the surface of the black ocean, heading toward the shore. When Behemoth 9 reached the coast of Scotland, the fishing village of Harlow Bay slept under a blanket of fog. The platform didn't stop at the shore. It began to bloom, releasing billions of black spores into the night air. The black ooze flowing from its innards filled the streets in minutes. It seeped through cracks, entered the lungs of the sleeping, replacing their blood with the fuel of the new world. Kaz saw his house on the hill. He saw the yellow light in the window. His consciousness reached out to it with mad force. A 200-meter-long biomechanical tentacle broke through the roof of his house with the tenderness of a lover. Mary woke not from fear, but from a sensation of incredible, unearthly warmth. She saw a sparkling mass above her, in the center of which was Kaz's face.
I'm back, darling.
Kaz said with 1,000 voices at once. He didn't kill her. He absorbed her. Kaz saw Mary's skin becoming as shimmering as his own, their memories merging into one stream. It was a moment of absolute ecstasy, from which the entire town around them began to vibrate in a single rhythm. By morning, Harlow Bay ceased to exist as a town of people. Now it was one giant, pulsating organism. Houses grew together via fleshy membranes. People became cells of this new body. They stood in the streets, their bodies intertwined, their eyes glowing with that same phosphoric light. Platform Behemoth 9 towered over the city like the throne of a new god. The black, shimmering stain rapidly spread further inland, moving along roads and railway tracks. From every radio station in the world, not an SOS sounds, but the calm, rhythmic breathing of the planet that has finally found its true blood. In the center of this mass, in an imitation of their living room, sit Kaz, Mary, and their daughter. They are covered in sparkling wax, motionless, but on their faces are smiles of inhuman joy. The world didn't end with a bang. It ended with total, ruthless integration. And somewhere in the depths of this new world, Kaz's voice continues to repeat.
We didn't pump oil. We just opened the door. And now we are all home.